I didn't see that on there.
Jim.
Hey, Shane.
Sorry.
Sorry. Good evening, everybody. Today is Monday, it's June 6, 2011, and I will call this meeting of the North Fork City Council to order. Let me inform you that this is an open meeting, and posted over here in the northwest corner of this room is the actual Open Meeting Act, made available to anyone that might want to do some reading. So I would ask you if you would please stand and join us in a moment of silence, and as well the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you'll continue with roll.
Coy,
Here.
Lange,
Here.
Merrill,
Here.
Lawson,
I'm here.
Murin,
Here.
Brenneman,
Here.
Faust,
Here.
Saunders, here.
All right, under action, I would ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda as was presented to you in their packet.
I'd
So-
move for approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval of the consent agenda. If you will please vote.
All councilpersons voting in the affirmative.
Okay, and the full agenda is presented to you tonight. Again, I would ask for approval of that agenda.
Second.
Motion with a second to approve the full agenda. Again, please vote.
All councilpersons voting in the affirmative.
Okay. We'll jump to then special presentation tonight on recreation update, if you would.
Yes, Your Honor, and Council, thank you. We have a nice update this evening. Phase 2 of the recreation project has been bid, and tonight you'll see 3 contracts for your consideration to be awarded. I'm proud to say and pleased to say that the bids come back within what our engineer, what his viewpoint was as far as his what he thought the numbers should be. They're right on target with our budget. So we're in good shape there so far. So barring any major changes within the construction project, we should be right on target with what the voters charged us with and what kind of results they're going to see. When we put this phase of the project together, we put together a punch list or a delete list just in case the bids came back too high. They include a number of alternates that we were able to strike out of the project in case the bids did come back unfavorable. Fortunately, they came back very favorable, and we were able to add those alternates back in that were always on the table and always what the citizens really wanted out of their aquatic facilities. So it includes the water piece. It also includes the multi-use structure and an electrical component of a large portion of the project. So we're in good shape there, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have about that. As we go forward, you'll see the actions coming up as far as the 3 contracts that are related to there and further in your agenda. We're making good progress down there. The water that we got and the rains that we got slowed us a bit, but with the sunshine over the weekend and this week, we anticipate a good, solid, full week of activities. I can tell you they're putting the drain tiles in under the football field as we speak, and making good progress there, and obviously with that ultimate goal of getting that playing surface ready for activity this fall. So with that being said, I'd be happy to answer any questions that anyone may have about this phase of the project.
Any questions at all, Council? Okay.
Also, I failed to mention, we're within budget, so phase 3 is Tazuka part of the puzzle that we're putting together, and we anticipate giving the order to the engineering staff, DLR, to start their planning portion of that project as well. So as the numbers are coming back and being solid as they are, we're real hopeful that we'll get all the whole project done for the community as they wanted.
Okay,
Here, I can get you a picture.
appreciate that, Shane.
You just wait for the change order. We have one one addition that, are you bringing that up? Yeah, there we go. We can talk about that. It's later on in your agenda as well, but since we're on recreation, we can show you what the football field hopefully will look like in real. There's a picture of it. One of the change orders that you see on there is the addition of that Norfolk Memorial Field with the large N in the middle and the center. Really kind of shows off that field, and has been passed by the school system, and they're very excited about it. Really like the presentation that makes for the field and bringing that whole complex together. That is a $12,500 addition, which we're able to put into the budget as well, since the numbers came back favorable. So that'll be for your consideration as well.
And then you're also going to have, there's another one on there which is related to Nemaha and the additional stuff, correct?
Oh yes, in the school, the bus parking that we delayed the bus parking. That's on your agenda as well. When we did the first phase of the project, we had the bus parking to the east side of the complex. A chunk of concrete out there for bring in the visitors and park the buses so they're out of the way. We delayed that implementation until we seen the numbers that came back. We thought it'd be prudent to wait till we seen the numbers for this major phase 2 part of the project. Being the numbers came back as solid as they did, we were able to include that back in the project. So DLR and Nemaha will put that but that bus parking back into the project as originally designed. Thanks, Clint.
Okay. Anything at all, council? If not, then?
Maybe, and just to clarify, and maybe Shane, you covered this well enough, but these were items that were included, but we kind of made a hit list if we came in over budget of things we could take away.
Exactly. They're not additions to or new things. They're a hit list that we established and thought we'd all be prudent and make sure that we had our priority list in case the numbers didn't come back favorable. We would be able to chop off enough of the project to get it to where we needed to be to fit within the budget. And fortunately, we weren't having to pull the trigger on that.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's move on to the regular agenda then, and I would ask for consideration of ordinance number 5165, authorizing the sale of city-owned property at 808 South 7th Street to Sid Sudbeck.
Your Honor, I would introduce ordinance 5165? 65 off
Yep.
first reading.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion with a second. Discussion. And I'm looking to you, Clint.
This is really just implementing the program that is in place with the block grant, with the CR grant. You've previously approved a subrecipient agreement with Mr. Sudbeck. If you approve this, we'll go through the process of transferring title to the property to Mr. Sudbeck, and then eventually the house will get built on it, and then it will in turn get sold to the ultimate user, and we will have complied with the grant.
Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none then. Do we have a short title on this, Beth?
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska to authorize the sale of city property, to provide the terms of sale and authorize the mayor to execute and deliver a quitclaim deed to the property, to provide for a remonstrance to said sale as provided by law, to provide when the ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and to provide for publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Okay. With that, if you would please vote.
All councilpersons voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5165 carries on first reading.
Your Honor, I would move we suspend the rules and pass this on second and third.
Second.
A motion with a second that we suspend and pass on second and third. Any further discussion at all? If not, please vote.
All councilpersons voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5165 carries on second and third.
Next item is consideration of approval of ordinance number 5166, amending the official city code to clarify the owner's responsibility for cleaning a sidewalk that is more than 5 foot in width, the addition of section 22-5 defining the term sidewalk, and amending section 2223 outlining the owner's responsibility for construction or repairs of a sidewalk more than 5 foot in width. I'm looking for a motion.
Your Honor, I'll introduce ordinance number 5166 on first reading.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We'll need some discussion here. Dennis?
Mayor, I could explain just to
Okay.
refresh everybody's memory. I did send out, and then you would have got it in your packet, and then you would have had an electronic copy of that last week. A short letter to the neighborhood that signed up that was at the 25th Street reconstruction design meeting that we had a few weeks ago. In an effort to try to be as responsive as we could and understand what their needs were and what the council's charge to us, to the staff and the elected officials were, to try to come up with some solutions, potential solutions, ways to understand the issue for what it's worth, and yet maintain as much consistency as we can as far as across the whole community when it's in reference to sidewalks and their installation and their maintenance and snow removal and the whole things that all property owners in the community deal with in this community if they have a sidewalk adjacent to their home. In an effort to do that, the subcommittee, elected officials met and staff brainstormed some ideas and came up with this ordinance that's in front of you. It does allow for, at least in my personal opinion, allows for that consistency to be maintained for staff and elected officials going forward, for the rest of the community, and it does belay, hopefully, some of the concerns that the neighborhood had about maintaining the whole 8-foot wide sidewalk. So this brings it back down to a level of maintenance that is very similar, if not exact, to the rest of the community. So hopefully that is where we land tonight, and hopefully we can that maintains that consistency and that fairness that we talked about at the meeting and we talked about in subcommittee meetings. So I'm sure there's some folks here that like to address that. I know I had some interaction with some of the neighborhood recently about that our particular ordinance tonight. So.
Okay. And so that's where we are. So if there's any of you that want to come forward, we'll ask you to use the microphone, state your name, sign in for us, and certainly give us your thoughts on what's been proposed.
Hi, Mr. Mayor and Council. My name is Christian Merchant. I had some concerns about defining and classifying a recreational bike park as a sidewalk.
Certainly, speak to it. Your thoughts and.
Well, I mean, I understand the sidewalk, the cleaning and maintaining of sidewalk, but my understanding is there's a recreational bike trail 8 foot wide on the east side of 25th Street going in, and there is no provisions in the ordinance or the section 22(1) or anything for a bike trail. I do believe that there are two separate things, is what I'm getting at.
Okay.
And why they're not being defined in this ordinance as such.
Do we need to read what has done? Well, as far as his reference here in the fact that how we were redefining sidewalks. Do you want to do that?
Well, I can attempt to answer that the best I can. When we do a project like this, there's a lot of input from to elected officials, from citizens across our community, and probably in general across the states, in the United States, as far as that goes, about wanting to always encourage recreation opportunities, whether that's on sidewalks, trails, byways, whatever we term those type of systems within a community to travel to and fro and to recreate. I don't know if that's necessarily really the consistency of the term. I'm not sure where the stumbling block is there, sir, for sure, but maybe you can clarify that for me. But I think the overall impetus of it is when you do these kind of projects, such as the 25th Street redevelopment, you really only get one bite at that apple. So, as they come up, it's a major project in our community, and they come around infrequently. So when the federal government's ready to step in and supply a lot of funds to help our local community, and we have local dollars, tax dollars set aside to address those things, it's really, you want the biggest bang for your buck, for lack of better words. And I think that's really why the trail was considered in the first place, because of all the input that we get through the Planning Commission and the City Council, and just the interaction with the community. There's a lot of people across the community who really want to see us establish those kind of byways and walkways and trails, or however you want to term it. So that's the effort we're trying to do this evening. It's not trying to be punitive to the folks that live on 25th Street by any means. And the effort in ordinance tonight is trying to reduce that liability and reduce that maintenance concern that we heard at the meeting down to what it is for any other citizen in Norfolk, regular size sidewalk, if they have that in front of their house. And really, if you look across the community and you look at the different the schools and the different public buildings that people really access, especially this time of year, you'll see that, at least in my humble opinion, you'd see that some of those sidewalks and byways and walkways and trails are utilized much more than this one probably will be. I don't know for sure if that's accurate, but when you go to public buildings to and fro from the schools, our kids are on those sidewalks, whether they're 4 feet, 5 feet, 8 feet, 10 feet wide, they utilize them, I think, pretty extensively. And that's part of our charge, I believe, is as city leaders and elected officials, I believe, and citizens in general, is to try to, when we have opportunity, to maximize dollars that are being provided through our taxpayers and our citizens, is try to maximize those to the fullest extent and get the biggest bang for our buck. So that's the impetus behind the 8-foot sidewalk, not to be punitive to the 25th Street property owners.
So it is a sidewalk.
It is a sidewalk, sure.
Can we,
Yeah.
okay, I mean, it's being sold as a bike trail to the public, and
It is a sidewalk. I mean, we went to 8 foot because we have access to federal dollars. We want to make it the biggest bang for our buck. So when we get the kind of input you get for wider trails or wider sidewalks, or however you want to term it, you really want to take advantage of that. So it's a sidewalk. It's a trail. You can term it whatever we'd like to really term it this evening. I don't know if it really changes the power of the byway.
it probably doesn't change the power of it, but it probably changes the public's opinion of it.
If it was a sidewalk, so I can understand you.
It's not as attractive. It's calling it a bike trail.
Yeah, it may not be, because bike trails, I think, are a little more sexy than sidewalks. And I think that's true. I mean, I agree with that. When you talk about trails, well, we're on a trail now, but really, when I'm kind of a bicycle fan myself, and when I access the city trails or sidewalks, they're all interchangeable for me personally. I mean, I'm on the sidewalk. Except for downtown, I'm not on that sidewalk, but otherwise I'm on the sidewalks and the trails across the whole community, and I utilize them both the same, whether they're 4 foot, 5 foot, or 8 foot. So, when the term, I think you're absolutely right, sir. I agree with you. The term maybe is a little more, futuristic thinking, or however you want to sell that to the community. But at the end of the day, it's a concrete byway or a sidewalk or a trail, or however we would like to term it.
Okay, and then the effort that was made to minimize the liability to the homeowner, I personally, and it's just my opinion, I think it confused things more. I mean, so the way it's trying to be amended here, if there's a 8-foot crack, the width of this sidewalk, is it the homeowner's responsibility to fix 3 foot of that crack? The city comes in and fixes their 5 foot. How is that going to happen? What happens when that happens?
It's a shared cost.
Well, who fixes it?
That could be discussed. I mean,
Per crack, or?
that could be discussed, if the city or the city and the property owner get together, and staff, please correct me where I'm misinformed here, but if the staff, or not the staff, but the citizen or the property owner and the city wants to get together and select a contractor to make that kind of correction, they could. If they want to hire the city to do it, I suppose that's feasible as well. But then at the end of the day, we want to be prudent with the taxpayer dollars, just like you would want to be prudent with your property owner dollars, and we'd want to get the most responsive bid to fix it, and then we'd split the cost according to those parameters.
Who is sued if going down a sidewalk or a bike trail or whatever we're going to call it here, and they hit a crack and fall,
That's
this
my next
person,
question.
and is injured seriously, and they take it to court or sue, who's going to be sued, the city or the citizen?
Does that depend on if they fell on the 3-foot wide path that's the homeowners, or the 5-foot that's the city's? How's that going to happen?
That's a good question.
The liability for accidents
Could you-
on that sidewalk.
Not to be flippant, but who's going to get sued? First of all, who can sue you? The answer is anybody with a filing fee. And who are they going to sue? They're going to sue everybody. With that said, the responsibility for the maintenance of the sidewalk, whether it's 4 foot wide, like we have in the community, whether it's 4 foot 8 inches wide, which we have some in the community, whether it's 5 foot wide, we have some in the community that are that size, or whether it's 8 foot wide, the responsibility for that is the property owner. Homeowners insurance covers that, addresses that. All of those kinds of things happen, and in many instances, depending upon the nature of the maybe nobody's responsible for it other than the person that trips on it or rides on it or falls or whatever.
So, so there's going to be 8-foot wide sidewalk put across my property, and once again, in my opinion, there's a very high risk for injury because of the recreation bike use of such, the sidewalk. I'm to incur all the liabilities of people getting injured on that?
The same way that anybody else that has a sidewalk has the responsibility for it, that responsibility goes to the property owner. I think there's an argument to be made that an 8-foot sidewalk is safer than a 4-foot sidewalk. That's what the law in Nebraska is. That's what the law in Nebraska has been.
Okay, but it's just, this is all confusing, and I'm sure it's not just to me. Like I said, okay, forget the cracking. Let's go with the cleaning. If it's something that is the city's responsibility to clean on that sidewalk, I'm liable for the injury that may occur because of that?
You're responsible, just like I'm responsible for the cleaning of my sidewalk.
No, I understand that, but they're splitting this 8-foot sidewalk into two people's responsibilities, cities and mine.
No, the responsibility is for the cost to participate in the cost of repair. The cost to the responsibility to keep the sidewalk clear from, I don't know what kind of debris are going to be out there. That is the property owner's responsibility.
Snow and ice?
Snow,
Yes.
ice, mud, whatever might find its way out there. The one benefit that all the people that have property along 25th Street are getting, that virtually none of the other people in the community have had, is that because of the fact that it's part of this project, because of the fact that Everybody else in the community is, to an extent, paying for the sidewalk in front of your property. You're not paying to put any of it in.
A lot of us don't want it there, but
What's
that's
that?
not here nor there.
Yeah.
What was that?
But
Don't want it.
the paperwork that was mailed to us homeowners said 4 foot of that, or 5 foot of, no, I think it was even 4 foot of the snow removal, ice, mud, and everything was the responsibility of the city. The other part was the homeowner.
No.
Just the opposite.
Right.
And one of the things, sir, where that came from is that there are other sidewalks like this that have been in place in the community for 10 years plus or minus. If you went along Paswalk Avenue, and I don't know how many of you have noticed along Paswalk Avenue on the north side, there's a sidewalk just exactly like this. And for years, there's been, it's never been an issue. And if you'd watch in the winter, you'd see that many of the property owners have done exactly what is talked about in this ordinance, which talks about cleaning that portion of the sidewalk that's closest to the property, closest to the building, farthest away from the street. That's in effect what those folks have been doing, or many of them have been doing for a long time, just based on my observations. And I don't know if you've happened to notice that over the years.
There's an 8 foot sidewalk on Paswalk?
Yes.
I didn't notice
Ever
that.
since Paswalk was reconstructed, there's been one from First to 13th on the north side of the street. The one on the south side is not 8 foot, but the one on the north side is. And it just hasn't been problematic.
So we're liable to clean that 8 foot sidewalk of snow and ice?
No, the ordinance
Not
here.
if we pass this ordinance. This ordinance will also apply to Paswalk if we pass it tonight.
Okay, but now I'm really confused. Who's cleaning the sidewalk?
The homeowners are currently cleaning the sidewalks on Paswalk.
Right.
Some choose to do the whole 8 foot, some choose to just do the 5 foot.
And the actual language that's in here talks about, in the event that there's a sidewalk anywhere in the city that is more than 5 foot in width, the owner or occupant shall be required to clean a path that is at least 4 feet wide, cleaning it on the edge of the sidewalk farthest away from the adjacent street.
Right.
So whether you've got, it's all even. Whether you got a 4 foot sidewalk, whether you got a 4 foot 8 inch sidewalk, whether you've got a 5 foot sidewalk, or whether you happen to have an 8 foot sidewalk, you're cleaning the 4 foot, you're in compliance with the snow cleaning requirements if you've cleaned off the 4 foot on the inside.
Right. And, you know, I'm sorry I blossomed into this discussion, but that goes back to my original. If the homeowner cleans his 4 foot, the city cleans their foot, if it's whatever it is, someone slips on the ice closest to the street, the homeowner's liable? For the city not de-icing their part of the sidewalk?
The property owner is responsible for the snow removal. They're in compliance with the code if they remove 4 foot.
Maybe just for clarification, I don't think the ordinance says the city's going to come clean the other portion. I think it's just that the homeowner's creating a 4 foot sidewalk within that
That's
for
correct.
pedestrian traffic. I don't think that should be misrepresented, that the city's going to come scoop the other part. You're just creating a pedestrian pathway on that sidewalk of 4 foot wide.
But I think to answer Christian's question, he's asking, okay, he's removing 4 foot. There's snow there, and there's snow and ice. Say we get 2 inches of, and it's this thick and it's iced up. Somebody slips on that, and we're not requiring him to remove that. Then who's liable? Because he's following the codes and our requirements to smooth the 4 foot.
If he's followed the codes, I don't know why he would be responsible
It shouldn't
or
be.
in jeopardy.
Codes are, if codes are minimum requirements. The point is, the responsibility for the removal of the snow is the responsibility of the property owner, the adjoining property. The issue about negligence or all of those kinds of things, there's a provision in this chapter about snow that says that the fact that you aren't in compliance with the snow removal things doesn't create liability. So all of us have to do whatever it is that we have to do. If you feel better minimizing your liability by cleaning the entire 8 foot, there's nothing in here that prohibits you from doing that. It's merely one of those, everybody makes decisions in regard to all of those things, but the responsibility remains with the property owner, just like the responsibility has been for those folks that are the property owners along Paswalk since that was done. Just as there's some other properties where there's got the same issues, where there's some wider concrete paths, wider than the 4 foot.
And really, just like everyone else's sidewalk, I mean, this was just an effort, we could easily, the council has obviously the prerogative to not approve the ordinance and maintain that you have to clean the whole entire 8 foot of this walkway. You have that option. This was only trying to be responsive to the concerns that the neighborhood are in part anyway brought up, Councilman Clausen, as you know. So the liability, when you take a walk around this community in December and January and you start looking at the sidewalks, we had this discussion this winter and had presentations on it, and you look at the number of sidewalks, no matter what they're with, that aren't cleared, and the liability that goes along with those property owners, it's pretty obvious that some people embrace that and some people don't worry about, or some people don't worry about it. I think that's the whole point of the question there. I'm not sure if that answers. If it was a 5 foot, I asked this question to one of the neighbors this morning, and if it was a 5 foot sidewalk, would all this go away? All the concerns, would they go away? I think that, and his response was he thought they would, but I don't know.
It would clarify a lot more because of the sharing of the repair and stuff is what I was getting at. There's still so many, there's just so many other questions that, like the sharing of the repair could bring up that were not addressed, is what my concern tonight was.
Again, we're trying to be responsive to the concerns and say we'll help share. We'll treat you fairly. We'll treat you as fair as the rest of the community's being treated. But otherwise, the council doesn't have to embrace that. They could just maintain that this is part of the redevelopment, and 8 foot is 8 foot. If this happens to be an 8 foot sidewalk versus the 3, and moving forward, you'll have all the snow removal and all the maintenance. And I'm sure we could do that. And I hope I'm not coming across as argumentative, because I'm not trying to be. But the point is, we, as a staff and really as elected body, they are representative of all the community, all 25,000 souls in this community, and they have a lot of consistency issues that they have to deal with. And this is a major one. I think this is, at least in my little opinion of it, it has potential to be a tipping point on consistency issues when it comes to snow removal and maintenance of sidewalks. So, the elected officials got the weight of this whole community on them. There's a lot of folks, I'm sure, that are going to watch the outcome of this and listen to the discussion, and I appreciate everybody's fine points tonight. But I hope everyone also considers that consistency issue. It's a major, major issue for them to deal with, because they represent everyone, and there's going to be a lot of opinions saying, to be quite honest with you, I could hear this. I've heard lots of arguments about enforcing the code over my tenure as a city employee. And one of the arguments I could easily see, if this is, even if it's modified to the ordinance tonight, is, boy, you're treating those folks up in 25th Street, up there where the money is, quote unquote, you treat those folks a lot different than you're treating me down here in another section of town. We've heard those arguments as a staff time and time again, and they're really, if there's inconsistencies, they're really hard to defend against. And I don't want to create more inconsistencies or an additional inconsistency with the sidewalks as we move forward. And I think our potential is there if we don't handle this situation very delicately. We're trying to give customer service. We're trying to do what's right. We're trying to be, again, consistent with everyone. So I hope you can appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. But, I'm down here on the bottom of the hill with money.
I understand.
B, I do, for what it's worth, 5 foot, in my opinion, a 5 foot sidewalk would probably please the neighborhood and the headaches that could come with this. But I do appreciate all your time for listening tonight.
Well, and I appreciate you being here. And I do want to say, for the many years that I was on the Planning Commission, and I bet I can look down and look at Councilman Lange to share this with me. Sidewalks has been an issue within this community for a long, long time, and I look back and I wonder, if we made some right choices when we were asked to consider giving maybe a waiver for future years to come back and ask for that sidewalk to be put in. Because more and more, we encourage young people to get out there and ride their bikes and be active. And so it becomes very difficult when we go back to that homeowner where a tree is now in place and we're asking them now to put in a sidewalk. And, that's certainly been the request by many of our citizens. Let's take care of some of these areas in our community in which our neighboring, schools aren't even serviced well with sidewalks. We've got kids that are needing to walk in the street in order to get to Bel Air School from some of those locations. So it's a touchy subject, and I understand exactly where you're coming from, because it's your backyard, and that's always the issue. I appreciate you being here. You've given certainly your concerns, and they're heard and appreciated. I'm sure there's others that would like to speak. I don't mean to shut you off, Mr. Merchant, but anyone else?
Thank you.
You bet.
I just want to make one comment real quick. I was on the subcommittee. We have an 8-foot sidewalk coming. We know that isn't a great thing for some of you. It might be a good thing for Norfolk. We heard a lot of concerns that night of the meeting, so what we simply did was try and take that 8-foot sidewalk and make it so you only have to shovel 4 foot and be responsible for a path in the wintertime, because we know not very many people are out walking and very few are out riding their bikes. But what we're trying to do with this tonight is to make it so you only have to worry about a 4-foot sidewalk like everybody else in town. So that's kind of the thing we're trying to get across. There are other problems with this, like your liability and things, but we're just simply trying to address the sidewalk and the removal of stuff so that we keep a 4-foot sidewalk just like everybody else in town. So that was the intent. We're trying to start to help these 8-foot sidewalks or trails or whatever they are to be consistent with everybody else. And there's going to be some bugs in it that we got to fix, but that's the first thing we're trying to do. So we may have to take more steps, but this is the first thing we're trying. So.
Thank you. My name is Rick Tomjack. My wife Sheila and I live at 204 North 25th. I wrote a letter earlier to the council. I think most of you had a chance to see that. My concern here is that as this is written, I understand consistency is important, but I just don't know if it's quite right at this point. I encourage you to take a step back. I'm not sure what the rush is to do this immediately. If it's going to hold up the project, hopefully not. There are 3 elements that I see to this. The one with consistency, I don't think that anyone, at least that I've talked to in my neighborhood, has a problem with maintaining a 4-foot walkway just like everyone else does within the city of Norfolk. I think that's fair, absolutely. On the second point, though, I can't agree with defining a sidewalk to include a bike trail. I just don't think they're the same thing, and I think that could cause trouble going forward. The trails in our network have additional benefits and responsibilities that go along. We heard about the additional liability. There's going to be an increase in traffic. And they're also going to end up being a part of a transportation network. That's where we're headed with the trails. When the trails get finished, they will be a form of transportation around town, and the bikes, and that's going to increase traffic. So because of that, I don't think we can define a trail as a sidewalk. I think that's a bad decision, and I would rather that we would in turn identify and define the trail on its own, for its own merits. Then we can go ahead and marry a sidewalk and a trail together. We can have a combination trail sidewalk, but share the responsibility accordingly, and still keep the codes the way they are with the sidewalk. The sidewalk code has been established. It's worked. It's workable. I don't think we should change that. The third point then is the ownership. I think that the trails also provide a community infrastructure that's important, and I've searched a lot of other city codes, some of the more established trail networks in cities, Yankton, Lincoln, Fremont, Boulder, Colorado, they all promote the fact that the city resources take care of those trails. It's a selling point for their communities, and I think that's important. If we're going to attract new business to our community and people to move here, we need an infrastructure like that we take care of. You know, how we fund that, we need to decide that. I guess a question I would have is, what would it take for the city to partially fund maintenance of the trail network? Is that something we can work toward? If we have additional dollars from the Memorial Field project, why not start something that we have money available to maintain the trails, because they're only going to expand. I think we have a good network, a good plan for the trails. It's not like we're picking and choosing what they're going to be. There's a well-communicated master plan for the trail network. We have them defined. Let's support them and share that responsibility. I'd like to offer some possible solutions instead of just saying, no, this won't work. One, as you can see, would be an ordinance that defines the trails on their own, outside of sidewalks. Secondly, the issue of heavy snow. We have an ordinance already. The duty of the landowner to have city aid on the right-of-way if there's a storm or an event where the city or the council says we have some type of an emergency. Why not write the same thing? If we separate the bike trails from the sidewalks, we can then add something to that ordinance, that code that says, all right, if we declare a snow emergency, the city will help support removal of snow. I think that's what a lot of property owners are concerned about, is that heavy snow, we won't have the equipment to move it. A couple of inches of snow, treat it just like the sidewalk. We tend it as normally we could get it moved, and I don't think that would be a problem. One thing that really concerns me is I'm afraid this could turn into an us versus them. The citizens against the council, and if that's going to happen, nobody's going to win. Our competitors down the road who are looking to take away the businesses and the folks that might move here are going to be grinning ear to ear to see us fighting over this and not get anything accomplished, because folks are going to move to their towns while we're battling about what we're going to do. So I encourage everyone to work together, take a step back, let's try and get this resolved, find some common ground, not adopt this as it's written tonight, step back, try to tweak it a little bit, maybe we can find something that's reasonable.
Rick, can I ask you one thing? When you're talking about responsibility of the 8 foot, are you looking at then liability responsibility as well?
Well, I think the liability, again, is going to be if you're negligent, if you don't scoop it at all and someone falls down, then you're negligent. If you scooped your 4-foot path and someone decides to walk out here on the ice and they fall, hopefully the court's not going to find that you're negligent. I would hope that the city and property owners could work together to maintain the walks, if they're extra wide. But again, if you have a master plan and you've identified which sections of the sidewalk and trails are combinations, now you can share that responsibility. They're separate from sidewalks, and you can treat the maintenance differently than if it's just a sidewalk. Sidewalk has to be the property owner's responsibility. But if we define the trails, we should be able to provide code that helps us to work together to fix them. So I think it could work. One question I have is to clarify, is there a chance that the property owners along 25th would be charged for any part of the construction of this sidewalk at this point in this project, for this trail? No. That's not the case?
No.
When would this start? Doesn't everyone else in the city have to pay for the sidewalk at their property?
Well, technically, you would pay for it as one part of 25,000 people. You're going to pay 1/25,000th because you're a citizen of Norfolk. So there is no zero cost to you. You're paying that 1/25,000th, just like every other citizen of Norfolk, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So you're paying the same as me, and I live 5 miles away from you.
Okay.
So we're sharing in that cost.
Okay.
You make a lot of valid points, and I appreciate you guys coming forward and giving us your thoughts. I guess the biggest thing is, Dennis, the first time we had the meeting at Our Savior, was that 2 or 3 years ago?
2 years ago, January.
2 years ago in January. So I guess
3.
That sidewalk was proposed then, so I don't think it's a big hurry. It's been laying there for 2 years. It's just now we have to make a decision.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to get right-of-way acquisitions taken care of so we can get some federal money. So there is a little bit of urgency to it.
2 weeks in time.
So changing the code at this time, is that vital to moving forward with the project, or what's the connection?
The connection there is trying to have clarification as we go out and start talking to property owners about right-of-way acquisition. We're on a tight time frame to get all the right-of-way acquired for this project by sometime in August in order to maintain our schedule for the federal funds that are a part of this project. We need to have those obligated by October 1st of 2011, or we're in the, I'm not sure what will happen then, but we will not be on the good graces of the Department of Roads and the Federal Highway Administration at that point in time.
Is there any risk to the grant money that's for recreation, I believe, for this project, if these trails are defined as sidewalks instead of recreational trails?
This project is strictly funded with highway dollars. The entire project, from basically right-of-way to right-of-way, which includes the sidewalk on the west side that's 5 feet wide, the sidewalk on the east side that's 8 feet wide, all of the new paving, and everything in between. And it's all put together as a total package that had a huge environmental review component. And it would be my belief that we would not have gotten this project approved without having sidewalks on both sides of this project from one end to the other. If we tried to change from the geometrics that we've got today, 5 feet on one side, 8 feet on the other, try to widen the street, narrow the street, we would be back going through an environmental review that would take months, if not a year. We were delayed about 60 days dealing with trying to get the environmental clearances to buy the home on the top of the hill that's vacant.
So if we made any changes, Dennis, then was there any chance that the funding could completely evaporate or go away? Or
Well, it's got that possibility because we would not make the October 1 obligation time frame. That would be the...
So with all those things, to answer your question maybe more direct on the timing of it, Rick, is pretty close. You know, Dennis will tell you 2 weeks. If we delayed the decision 2 more weeks, it may probably be okay, but anything past that would be problematic. I have major potential because there's a lot of things got to occur before that August time frame that he's talking about. So. Okay.
I guess the connection between the change in the code and establishing the right-of-way still eludes me a little bit. In an effort to give others a chance to talk, I just like to leave everyone here with some final comments, and that's that our community, I feel, at least at times when we go to some of the neighboring communities down the road, they're getting a lot of new business. The last thing we need here is more taxes. What we need is more taxpayers, and the only way that's going to happen is if we can draw folks to this town. And you know, we don't want to get a reputation of, well, the property owners don't want to invest the time and the effort to have a good infrastructure, or, well, we have a city council that isn't sensitive to the needs or is heavy-handed. That's the last message we want to send. So I encourage everyone to, let's work together on this and get it resolved and get our trail networks in place, and I think we'll all be better for it.
Thank you.
Appreciate your comments, Rick.
Good evening. My name is Rod Wilkie. My wife Brenda and I live at 2401 Hardison Drive. Thank you very much, Rick, for excellent neighbor comments. I appreciate that. We're at the top of the hill, but what little money we have had has trickled down to either City Hall or to Madison over the course. But at any rate, both of us are working. My spouse works, I work. We are not I I've heard a lot of comments here this evening, and I'm reminded of it depends on what the definition of is came to mind. And consistency, I heard that word as well. And I want to commend the property owners along Paswalk if they've been clearing that. I'd highly commend them, and I would say shame on the city of Norfolk. That is classified as part of the trail system, is it not?
I don't know that.
It is on your map.
Okay.
Okay. So, that being said, we need to be consistent, and Norfolk needs to take responsibility. I'll just say right up front that this ordinance as proposed needs to die tonight. You know, and I'll throw some positive spin on this. You know, when you drive into Norfolk from the south, I love the sign out there. I love coming in when that thing is lit up, Norfolk, Nebraska. You know, it says a community of strength. And I believe that. I know people, and we all know people in this room, personally. We do business with one another, as a community should. We attend school events and functions with our children, or have in the past. Our children are gone now. We might sit in a church building and worship together. That is community, and I like that word. It signifies a unified body of individuals. But we've been in the city almost 20 years, and I don't know that I've really ever detected a real strong, unified body between the citizens and city leadership. And that concerns me. And as Richard said, we need people in this town. And that reputation is out there because it's not unified. And we could unify around something. But this proposed ordinance is not that. You know, more often than it should occur, and I've been here before, and maybe some of these folks have too, citizens are forced to be in attendance at these meetings in order to protect and defend either our assets or our ideals from a strong-arm approach from city administration, city leadership. And that is not right, folks. It's not right. A recent example could reveal itself in the manner in which a very contentious water park was camouflaged into other park improvements. And there's a lot of folks who are bitter about that. I'm not saying one way or the other, pro, con at this point. I'm just saying that's an example. And now we have city administration attempting this end-around run to establish a section of bike trail through a misguided proposed new ordinance. And we expressed our disagreement with this at the last meeting in May at Our Savior. And I think you could stand corrected. At 08, this was not a sidewalk. It never has been a sidewalk. This was promoted as a bike trail. And I have the meeting, little shiny thing here. It says 8-foot bike trail on both of these, in the 08 meeting as well as the one in May. So we expressed our disagreement with that, but somebody didn't like what they heard, and you came up with your own version of a solution. And I guess, could we have, for the folks here, the residents, who was on, and I'd like those names recorded, who came up with this ordinance, this proposed ordinance?
That's before you tonight?
Yes, Mr. Widener, you mentioned you were on that committee. Who else was
That's
with
true.
you?
I was. We had a subcommittee meeting, and top of my head, Beth, can you help me out? I mean, we brought the elected officials together and discussed it, and You know,
Well, no, I saw one raised hand. I'd like the names of those who proposed this ordinance.
we'll have to look it up here. I can't remember off the top of my head who was there.
Oh, surely you can't.
Well, I can't, because I go to a lot of subcommittee meetings, sir. I mean, I'm not trying to be
Okay, that's-
evasive at all. I go to a lot, and we talk about a lot of issues, so.
Our city attorney drew up the ordinance. We sat in a room and tried to figure out the best way to keep you from having to shovel 10 foot of sidewalk or 8 foot of sidewalk. And then he summarized this, trying to make it the best we can, so you only had to do a 4 foot sidewalk, if that helps you in any way.
So our city attorney drew this up
Yes.
originally.
Well, not originally. I don't want to be misleading by that. Dave's absolutely correct. I mean, the city attorney drew it up, but after input, I mean, that's his charge to write the language, but the language is developed from the grassroots, and those are the things we're trying to cover. And again, you know, I want to say, you know, I appreciate your comments, but I want to say, you know, when you say the strong arm approach of administration and the fact that we can't get together as a community, that, you know, that's bothersome to me as the city administrator. We're really trying our darndest not to have that kind of reputation, and we're trying to interact positively. This was purely a response. Our intent was pure on being responsive to the citizens at 25th Street and coming up with a solution. Now, maybe there's other solutions out there, but this is our best shot at it.
Mr. Widener, did you contact, in this solution process, how many of the property owners along 25th were part of that process?
From the meeting before, we said that we'd have your ability to come in here and engage the council, and that was our charge, and that's what this evening's about, is to have your input be heard, and that's what's occurring. So
Okay, well,
that's part
and I would like to share that. And I guess what bothered me was last Wednesday evening, it was late when I opened the letter from the city of Norfolk. We as property owners had 3 days to react to this and respond to it. Several of the homeowners along 25th never even got a notice. That is not proactive working with citizens of the city. And because of that, I indicated that the ordinance needs to die, and I know money is driving this issue. It's not the desires of the citizens. It's money. It is about money, and it's about the street project. And I'll stand here and I'll say 25th Street needs improvement. No doubt about it. The folks that have those horrendous driveways down on the current one, they need assistance with that. That needs improvement. But folks, a bike trail is a bike trail. You know, when I was directly involved in agricultural production, I raised both sheep and swine. And I sheared those sheep. Now, I could take that woolen fleece, and I could put it over the top of a pig. I'm not going to increase my flock size. I still have a pig, and it still smells like a pig. You cannot, folks. Merriam-Webster, you keep calling this sidewalk. Merriam-Webster defines sidewalk as, look it up.
Can I ask you, Mr. Wilkie, can we go back to really, the issue here so that we can better understand what your concern is?
Here's my concern.
So that we can hear from everybody.
This is a citizen petition against the proposed ordinance as delivered by mail to affected property owners in a letter from the city of Norfolk, Nebraska, dated May 31st, 2011, signed by the interim city administrator, Shane Widener. Now, there is a paragraph in there that just repeats what was in our notice of the ordinance. There are 2 subsections, very short. Subsection 1 of citizen petition follows. We, the undersigned property owners, reject an attempt by city administration and city council to redefine the definition of a sidewalk in order to, number 1, advance the city's agenda for construction of an 8-foot bike trail on the east side of North 25th Street from Highway 275 bypass north to Skyview Park. And number 2, to transfer the city's responsibility for maintenance, upkeep, repair, and clearing of a pathway said pathway clearly designed and promoted as a bike trail to the property owners along the east side of 25th from Highway 275 bypass north to Skyview Park. This proposed bike trail is clearly defined in the City of Norfolk, Nebraska Park Department's Park and Trail Master Plan, and as such, we demand that the City of Norfolk take full responsibility for all maintenance, upkeep, repair, snow, mud, ice, and debris removal on the bike trail should it be constructed. And I would submit to you that there are 17 property owners who have signed that. Subsection 1, subsection 2, 5 short lines. Furthermore, the undersigned property owners refuse to grant easement to the City of Norfolk, Nebraska for a proposed construction along North 25th Street from Highway 275 bypass north to Skyview Park should this proposed ordinance or any portion of it be passed and adopted by the City Council or enforced in any way by said council or city administration. And I would submit that there are 15 property owners who have signed on to that. So, bottom line, I have no opposition as a property owner to a sidewalk. I'll care for it. I'll take care of it as a sidewalk. We currently have a 4-foot sidewalk. I'll take care of that. If the city wants to put a bike trail in, that is city responsibility. That's community city responsibility. The other option is to incorporate it right into the street and let the snow plows blade it off. A simple yellow line 8 foot in from the curb with yellow hash marks, and if you want to put a yellow bike every now and then, fine. It's a done deal. You have your bike trail incorporated within the city street, off to the side. Then you could use that outside portion, that little green area you were going to have, plant some trees. You could put trees along our property as a corridor. I love trees. It would beautify it all the way to Skyview. But folks, a sidewalk is a sidewalk. A bike trail is a bike trail. And you can't color them different colors. So I would submit this to you, Madam Mayor. This is the original signed petition.
Did you keep a copy for yourself?
I have.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. Anyone else? Mr. Wilkie, thank you.
I guess I just wanted to ask Mr. Wilkie if, is that the consensus of the whole group, that you'd be happy with a 5-foot sidewalk and end of discussion and we'd move on?
I would be happiest with a 4-foot sidewalk. It's working fine. And I clear it as best I can and keep it clear.
I think standard ADA now is 5 foot. Is that right, Dennis?
The reason you go to 5 foot is there's sometimes with the ADA sidewalks that you have to put in the landings, and those have to be 5 by 5. So as to not have a 1 foot by 5 foot long box out along the sidewalk, we just went to the 5 foot wide sidewalk to eliminate that. They're a little bit nicer.
But I guess that's my question. We're beating around the bush, chasing our tail.
I think if you want a bike trail, put it in the street. Put it in the street.
But I guess, so you're saying that you don't feel that there'll be any pedestrians on that, just bike traffic? Because I have bike traffic on my 4-foot sidewalk.
But there's a sidewalk on the other side, is there not?
What's that?
There's a sidewalk on the other side. A 5-foot sidewalk on the west side.
Right. So you think that it'd be okay to have one on both sides and that would be the solution to the problem? I'm just asking.
If you put the bike trail in the street.
Could I make a comment on that bike trail on the street? I don't know if you guys knew, we found out on the Wednesday after the meeting, that a bike trail can be on the street. It does not have to be up on your sidewalk and in your lawn. The city says that. The state and federal have no things, and that's from Mr. Lohman over at the State Highway Department. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but you know how it goes.
Marilyn, do me a favor, will you? State your name and address for us.
Yes,
so for the
Marilyn
record.
Alexander, 2408 Norfolk Avenue.
Thank you.
And I'm representing myself. And first of all, I have to admit that my husband said the reason I had knee surgery was because I didn't put my foot in my mouth. I went all the way to my knee and wore it out. So are you ready? First of all, as I said, that path could have been on the street. I think you can solve some problems later on by not going on people's lawns and driveways. Secondly, if we told the government one thing and then renamed it, we'd go to jail. You are trying to change the name from bike trail to sidewalk, and that's not legal. And thirdly, you can't believe how many people said to me, don't bother to waste your breath. They've made up your mind, and they're just going to shove it down your throat like everything else. I'm sorry, but that...
Yeah, well, and I'm sorry to hear
I've
that.
had comments ever since there were stakes in my lawn. I couldn't go anywhere without people wanting an explanation. And I'm sorry, and I don't mind paying taxes, okay? I'm for it. But I do think that there's been no communication. I mean, all of a sudden, we get these stakes in our lawn. I was going to give you guys an Emily Post etiquette book so that you knew how to correspond with your public and write notes. Olson, I chewed that guy out the other day because here he comes and puts stakes in my lawn again after we were told we could take them out. And I said, you tell your company they need to learn manners. Good manners will get you anywhere. Lack of notification, lack of communication has been rampant with this whole project. Sorry. Okay, was there anything else I'm supposed to say, Bill? Bill let me talk because he says I'm more forceful. Was there anything else? So anyway, but so that's, I mean, I think it was a height of rudeness to do that.
Well, I apologize for that, Marilyn. I don't know that there was ever any intent to, and your
But
point
you
is well
still
made.
tell-
Your
I
point
mean,
is,
Should I have had him arrested for trespassing?
you could have.
I know I
Probably
could have.
could.
I mean,
Okay.
you could have saved yourself a lot of problems all the way around by communication.
Well, Marilyn, I do remember at the meeting, he did specifically say that they were going to be coming back and install, he said that you could take the stakes out and they would be coming back to reinstall them.
But-
So, I mean,
Wouldn't a 44-cent letter been worth it, or a postcard? To say when they're coming back?
again,
I mean-
it would have been a matter of, I suspect, for them to exactly define the specific time. So,
Well,
you know.
I just, sorry.
I don't think
I'm
that
not
it's
sorry,
their...
actually. I'm mad about it because I think it's rude, and if I ran a business like that, I wouldn't have had any business.
Marilyn, your point's been made, and I
All right,
appreciate it.
sorry. Okay.
Okay. Anyone else here tonight that wants to speak?
Can I borrow your pen, Dale? First of all, I think Dennis will concur that these are TEA 21 funds, and that there are about, and they are part of the federal transportation highway system, and that's where the funds are coming from, and there's about 10 or 12 things that you have to comply with in order to get these funds, of which one is a bicycle trail, or secondly, you can have a bicycle pedestrian pathway. And I've looked and looked and looked in all of these federal TEA 21 stuff or information on the web. Nowhere do they mention anything about a sidewalk. And you can pretty much rest assured that if this is passed tonight and you call it a sidewalk, those people are going to be notified that it's no longer a bike trail, it's a sidewalk. And it's like was earlier said, that we have a park and trail master plan information right on our website. And if you change that trail to a sidewalk, we're not going to call it a park sidewalk master plan. And I'm sure that the Paswalk deal, with Dennis would probably know, was that a TEA 21 funded bike path down on Paswalk, Dennis?
Paswalk was all locally funded. Paswalk was a locally funded project.
Locally, okay. But I'll pass this around. I think that really the city council was misinformed when this thing was all started out, because in conversing with the Department of Roads, this could have been put between the street and the curb. It didn't have to be up on the grass area and the way that it's being designed now. And then snowplows could have just cleared it, and it could have been handled like a bike trail, like it's called, you know. And I just think that it would really be better if the council would table this thing tonight and give it some stronger consideration, and maybe form a committee of not just the 25th Street, but Paswalk people, the whole city, and get this thing straightened out instead of rushing through it. You've got till October or August or something to get it defined, instead of having a hop-notch type ordinance written up here tonight that to me doesn't sound good. And it's called a sidewalk instead of a, there is a difference, you know. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bill. Anyone else this evening? Okay, I will look to this council for other discussion.
Dennis and Shane, if we just leave it the way it is and drop this tonight, can you go on with your part of it and keep it going? And then if we want to sit down later and work on it, we can?
I would.
I mean,
think
if they,
we would, but
we were
we
trying
would-
to help them cut down the size of their sidewalk to clean. If they don't want us to do that, then I'd say that we go back to square one and find out what they do want, but you can keep going if we do that?
Yeah, I mean, the issue will be that until the code is changed, we will be expecting that the property owners adjacent to the sidewalk, the trail, or whatever, just as they are along Paswalk, will be expected to clean the snow from the entire
Right.
thing, I think, by
Well,
code.
I got this-
By practice, I think that, you know, I don't think anybody on Paswalk's ever been asked to clean the whole thing if they've had a 4 or 5 foot path through there.
But I mean, we got 4 or 5 here tonight, we got Mr. Wilkie with 15 more. If all 20 doesn't want us to help them, then I say we go on, and then you do what you want to do, and we can have meetings to try and figure out a different solution. I just don't want to hold you up with the project either.
Yeah, and the issue is having some clarification as we go out and try to acquire the right-of-way necessary to construct this project. And most of what we need is temporary easements to do the shaping on the citizens' property.
I don't know how many,
Alexander's is one exception. There is a small triangular piece of actual right-of-way that we're taking on that side of the street. There's 5 or 6 of those, and I can't think of off the top of my head exactly where they are.
do you know how many are up and down 25th Street that you need to talk to?
I have a total of 41 tracks that we have to
Well,
acquire.
we got about 20 here tonight, so there's half of them. If you take the list with you and say, you know, you wanted it this way, that might help you in your negotiations, so. But I'd take that list and I'd go talk to those people, and if that's the way they want it left, maybe you can start negotiating with them.
Help me understand what you're suggesting.
I'm saying that we vote down the ordinance. If they don't want us to pass it, we vote it down because we were trying to help them, but if they don't want our help, Mr. Wilkie's got the list, then if they don't want our help, over half of them don't want our help, we just go on the way it is. And we can set up meetings and try and resolve it down the road, but we can't interfere with his negotiations. So, like Rick said, we keep working at it to come up with a common ground, but leave it the way it is right now, and if that carries over, it carries over.
I think too, though, to find this common ground, we got to establish what's already done, what's already taken place, and what can be done and what can't be done. You know, I think Dave's onto something here. I think obviously this ordinance isn't sitting well with half the people Dennis has got to talk to, so you can't do, you know, but there is some stuff that's probably already in the works and going to happen, you know, and I don't know exactly what that is. So now it's what you have, what can we take what we have now and make it work? You know, that's kind of where I think we got to go now. I know some brought up, you know, move it here and do that, but I don't know if what's done now is, you know, it's already, you've got the engineers working on it, staking out, it's going. And now, I mean, am I right?
You're absolutely right.
Yeah. So, I mean, now we've got to take, okay, we've got this. Yeah, we agree that this is good and this is bad. But how can we make it where it's good? You know, and I think that's what, you know, Dave's getting at. And I think it's time maybe if this doesn't go through tonight, Dennis now has this on his side when he goes and does negotiate. Say the council sat here, listened to people's concern, and there will be future work on this, but hopefully it doesn't stop the project because some people say, well, now I got to, you know, I don't think this is about moving snow at this point, you know, so I think we just got to keep working on it. So I think Dave's got a good suggestion there, so thanks.
Okay. Come on forward if you want to.
From what I understand here, the homeowners, they don't want to take responsibility of this. If you go back in and you do a change order on this thing, everything is going to be moved back. So what would be wrong with the city saying, okay, we're going to take full maintenance of that project, and if it's done right and maintained, I don't think there'd be that much of a problem.
Amen.
I see both sides of this, and I understand how it's happening. You homeowners got to realize if you go back in to do a change order in this thing, it may not help you at all. It may go through anyway, and it costs the taxpayers more money. I'm not standing up for the council. I'm not standing up for you. I'm saying that somewhere we have to have meet in the middle here. I think that the answer is probably the city to take care of it. If maybe have something wrote up that they'll take care of it for 5 years or something like that there. If you go back and do a change order on this thing, look how far that's going to set back. Look what it's going to cost the city.
And your point is well made there. I think that truly has been the concern of the engineer here. So
I know what change orders cost. I see them too.
Yep.
And I understand setting this thing back over just a small thing like this, but it's not small to the people there, and it's not small to the council, the city. Maybe that's something you should consider. I don't.
Hey, I appreciate the suggestion. Do me a favor, though, for record.
Sure.
State your name for us, will you?
You bet.
Thank you.
Mayor and council, that's a very, very valid point in my opinion as well. And I think that's, you know, as much as we compress the timeline or the issues on this runs more risk of falling apart completely, the whole project and the funding and all the things that go back with it. You know, to regroup and reorganize and put a bike trail on the streets at this point, or even to shorten, even to bring that width from the 8 feet down to 5 feet is a change that we have to go, as Dennis said, have to go all the way back through the process, and then you run that risk of losing the project altogether, which is probably, I don't think, if I understanding the folks right, they don't want to risk that either. You know, at the first blush, you know, the ordinance proposal, again, was an attempt to try to meet in the middle and do exactly what the gentleman was suggesting there. Obviously, at least in some viewpoint, we missed our mark there, but if we don't pass the ordinance tonight, then I think, and Clint and Dennis, you can correct me where I'm wrong, it would go back to the original intent of what the code says, and that means the whole 8 foot. You know, we're trying to get an ordinance put together that met in the middle, let the project go forward so the property owners could at least have some semblance of that we heard them, and then they'd be more readily partners in the whole project itself, so there wasn't any compression of that timeline and any risk of losing that. And that's really what the attempt of the ordinance was. So I'll just say that for consideration for the elected officials. we can go forward and, and we still have to move the project forward either way with the passing of the ordinance. And we can work on different things, but I don't know if the property owners are going to be willing to sign for their easements or take care of the paperwork that's associated with this if there isn't any solid direction on what the future brings. Because if you don't pass this compromise tonight, then it goes back to the original intent of the sidewalk and how it's ordinance and how it's written.
But I think one positive thing we got going for us right now is it's June. We're talking about snow here. We've got time to work as a community on getting this solved. I mean, the committee worked hard to kind of meet everybody in the middle. Obviously, it's not where 25 people wanted us to be. So I think we've got time. The project doesn't have time. Project's got to roll. I mean, it's going to, and I think from listening to everybody tonight, I think that's kind of what the consensus was, is, hey, we support this project. We just want some clarification on this and this. And so hopefully, I mean, that's the gamble you take, but I don't know, what's that mean when, you get where we at right now? I think we might be, so.
Well, the letter that Mr. Tom Jack sent, pointed out the fact that if, we have disagreement in this room tonight with elected officials and the property owners, then you have potential to have a black eye possibly in our neck of the woods here. Nobody wants to have that. Now, I don't know if they can speak as a group, if we do what Councilman Faust is suggesting, what their buy-in to the process is going to be as far as letting the project go forward. I mean, and signing the easements and letting that stuff go forward and doing exactly the opposite of what your petition said tonight. I don't know.
Mr. Lange, is this in your ward too, then?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. How do you feel about it?
Well, I was trying to, I'm not one that really wants to interrupt people but as I look at this, and I will tell you, I do bike. I bike quite a bit. Busier roads that have hills on, which 25th Street is one of those. I mean, I don't bike that right now because I don't care to be that close to the traffic. When I bike 13th Street, I ride the sidewalk as much as I can there. It's a narrow sidewalk, but there aren't a whole lot of people that walk in that area, so I feel safer riding in that area. I hear the concerns, about, and I hear the concern about snow removal so much, and ultimately I'm not so sure that that's truly an element that really hangs out there, because we all, we talk about snow removal every year. We're going to be talking about snow removal in November and December again, and it always is. It's because of the snow removal, and ultimately there isn't. If you count the number of times, and if you go back and look at the number of times in the last 2 years that we've had to remove snow from our sidewalks and things like that, there really aren't that many days. Granted, it's a bearcat when you have to do it because it's cold, or you got to hire somebody else to do it that way. So then it really gets down to what we were talking about was liability, about, okay, who's gonna get sued when something does or doesn't happen. And I would present to you that I would be much more concerned about the liability if I had a 4-foot sidewalk out in front of my place and I had people biking on that in comparison to an 8-foot sidewalk that way. I think this ordinance that was here was an attempt to make things so that we remove some of that stigma out there of snow removal, but I don't think that it ever really addresses some of the other things where, I mean, the liability situation's still there. I think the 8-foot situation lessens our amount of liability more than it adds to it. I think a 4-foot sidewalk would definitely add to our potential for liability out there, just because we're going to be intermingling bicyclists and pedestrians. So what I hear from Mr. Wilkie and in the petition that's out there, and you have to correct me if I'm reading this incorrectly, that if we proceed forward with this, the threat is that the 15 people will not sign on the easements, and those are construction easements. Is that correct or not?
Well, I can't speak for the others that signed it because everybody read it individually. I included.
Okay, but that,
every sign. Yes,
okay, that is how it reads.
Yeah, because this ordinance, this proposed ordinance, needs to die.
Okay, and I was just asking, I just needed an answer to that question. So, am I inferring it correctly then that if this ordinance dies and the city and the department or the Midwest Acquisitions, is that who? Midwest Acquisitions, comes out and does their due diligence here in the next 45 days, are we going to be able to attain the easements then?
I will only speak for myself. There are others here, some who have signed, but as for our property, I will not grant an easement if you pass this ordinance.
Okay, that wasn't my question, though. My question was, if we do not pass this ordinance, will you grant the temporary easements?
Well, the decision was made, but I'm sorry, I didn't get your name. You signed it. Bader. Mr. Bader, I had a very good point. I'll speak for us as property owners. And I have 2 questions to ask for that. What is the city's...
Mr. Wilkie, will you come forward to the mic so that, thank you.
Just
2 short questions. One is for Mr. Widener. Are you married, Mr. Widener?
I sure am.
Okay, great. Well, you look happy. But and you mentioned
I am. Thank you.
You mentioned common ground. My dear wife and I have been married a long time. You can't find common ground unless you communicate. And the communication in this process was gone. And that doesn't build trust, folks. So, that being said, that's that. Now, what was the question? The gentleman had an excellent point. As property owners, I don't understand the city's reluctance to take full responsibility for a promoted bike trail. I think I might even use it. My wife and I have a bike. We bought them in Minnesota because everybody biked in Minnesota. We get down here and we've ridden. Not a lot. I would probably use a bike trail. But it's a bike trail, folks. Call it a bike trail. Take responsibility for it. As Mr. Tomjak said, let's promote it in the community, but take ownership of it as a city. Don't put that, it's 3/4 of a mile, maybe a short half mile. I don't know what that is. Take responsibility, clear it. I, as a property owner, if you would say, we're going to put a bike trail in, it's all on the city, put it in, take care of it, maintain it, let's go. Get the project done, do the street work, help these folks' driveways, our intersections.
Okay.
That's me speaking.
Very good. Thanks, Mr. Wilkie.
Mr. Wilkie, you still didn't answer my question.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Laney.
If we do not pass this ordinance, will you sign on granting the temporary easements?
Not unless...
Okay, either yes or no.
No, I'm not going to answer that way. If you will, as a majority council tonight, say you will accept responsibility for an 8-foot bike path, then I will sign the easement. But until I hear that from the council, no, I won't.
Okay, and we can't do that because that's not an agenda item, accepting responsibility.
Well, as Mr. Alexander said, what is the rush? I know it comes back to dollars. Everything always comes back to $1.
But Rod, those are your dollars.
I realize that, and we need, and I'm not degrading, I'm not downgrading this project.
Okay.
It needs to be done in Norfolk. But this was not the right process. This ordinance is not right. Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
I think I speak for my wife and I at 204 North 25th. We are not willing to stop the negotiating process, but we're still not completely convinced that we'll have a solution we can live with. I think that's still a risk we have, so there's some trust that's going to have to go on here. And I think that this council is going to have to convince us that you will work with us to find a solution. We still feel that maintaining this bike trail is the right thing to do for a city our size. I really think that's what's going to get us in a position to attract more taxpayers and more businesses to our community, is to make a commitment like that. And I agree it has to be a shared commitment. We're certainly willing to do our share to clear a 4-foot path along that street. I don't care how wide the sidewalk is, or the bike path is, or the shared bike path sidewalk. But I think we need to define it as that. At this point, I don't think we could say, we would trust this council that we would go ahead with negotiations if this council will give us at least some sense that you will work with us to find some common ground and not just say, well, we're out of time, we're going to stick with what we've got, you're responsible for the whole thing.
Thanks, Rick. All right, council, where are we? Any further discussion on this?
I guess I want to make one comment. It was mentioned, I think Mr. Wilkie maybe mentioned that he felt the need to come here to defend his property. And when I got involved in this process, a gentleman told me, his political science teacher said, in a democracy, the government you get is the government you deserve. So I commend the people that are out here being involved in the process, being involved in what we're lucky enough to have in this country and in this state and this town is a democracy. I wish there was this many people in here every night for our meetings. Most of the time it's just staff. So I commend you for coming out and being part of the process. That's what the democracy is about. So I hope you don't take the sense that you're here to defend your property. I hope you're taking the ideal that you're here practicing the democracy that we've been gifted with. So thank you all for coming.
I too would like to make a comment. I guess I would answer Mr. Wilkie as who was on the subcommittee. I'm proud to say that I was one of the members on the subcommittee. The reason that this ordinance was even drafted or discussed was a direct result of the opposition and the statements and the concerns of the citizens at the May 31 meeting at Our Savior Lutheran Church. That's what precipitated this ordinance. This ordinance was drafted to try to meet the concerns of those citizens who testified at Our Savior's Lutheran Church that night. We tried to make a compromise to alleviate the question about whether I got to clean all the snow or I get clean part of the snow. If the sidewalk breaks up, do I have to repair the whole sidewalk or do I have to repair part of it? We tried to write an ordinance to address those situations. Obviously, we have failed. People here this evening have told us, you have not met our demands. I think we have. I think we were very cognizant about considering your concerns and trying to be a council that was addressing your concerns. I'm sorry to say you do not agree.
All right. Any other comments or by the council here before we go forward? And we need to take some action here. And so there is a motion with a second. We've had plenty of discussion. And I'm going to ask that you vote on what's... Whoops, I'm sorry. We will have Beth read for us the short title.
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska to amend Section 22-1 of the Official City Code to clarify what portion of a sidewalk must be cleaned of ice, of snow, ice, mud, etc. when the sidewalk is more than 5 feet in width. To enact Section 22-5 to provide a definition of sidewalk as used in Chapter 22, Article 1. To amend Section 22-23 to set forth responsibility for cost of construction or repairs to a sidewalk that is more than 5 feet in width, to provide when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and to provide for publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Okay. If you will please vote.
All council persons voting against the motion, ordinance 5166 goes down on first reading.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for the conversation that was had tonight. I guarantee you there's going to be plenty more by this council. So we will do our best. We've heard you, and it's appreciated. So again, thanks for being here. Are we ready to move on, council? All right. Next is, I would look for a motion for consideration of approval of Burbach Aquatics recommendation to award contract number 1, pool construction of the Norfolk Recreational Improvement Bond, Phase 2 project to Mechanical Incorporated from Freeport, Illinois, for a total of $3,340,322.
I'll make the motion, Your Honor.
Second that, Your Honor.
We have a motion with a second. Is there any need for further discussion after listening to the update?
I'd just like to ask Shane, you looked through everybody's, you looked these over, I'm sure, very carefully. Was there anything that stuck out about these guys that you really compliment them about, or?
Yes, we have, and our Burbach and Associates Incorporated looked through them extensively, and their comments were in their little letter to the mayor and council. Reputable firms, great experience, low bidder, responsive, engaged, all those kind of acronyms or not acronyms, but kind of descriptive terms. So I think they're going to do a good job for us. Their experience speaks for themselves, and they're going to bring in a good product, I'm confident.
And again, for the record, we did not have any Norfolk contractors bid on this portion of this? I mean, the main bidders, not
The general contractors?
Yeah.
No, we didn't have any general.
What I'm getting at is when people come to me and say, why didn't you vote for a Norfolk contractor to get this? I want to make sure that there wasn't any that voted to be the general.
For the overall?
Yeah.
We didn't see any in there. There was local bidders or local folks that would be involved in the project.
And that's great. That's great.
Councilman Fowles, just a little clarification on it, because we did look at it. And swimming pools, if you count the number of swimming pools that are built in the area, and it's a specialty situation thing. It's not like that you do them all the time, and to the people that are doing this, if you looked at Burbach's letter, they've done over 35 of them for them within the last, Burbach's been in existence since 1976, I believe, was their documentation that they said. So that's over, that's more than one a year.
Right. And I wasn't trying to indicate that nobody here was able to do it, but I get people to say, why didn't Hespe, why didn't Beckenhauer, I just wanted to point out that they weren't in the mix, and these guys do it all the time, so that they don't ask that question.
And I guess the most forthright answer on that is because none of the local GCs bid on it that way. Again, you pick and choose, the things that you do and that you do well.
Yep, and I appreciate that.
Probably the most qualified company in the area that for this contract number 1 is Christensen Construction out of Pender. And they've been watching this project for the 10 years we've been working on it, and they have just gotten enough work this season, or for this year and next year, that they just were not able to bid on it because of having the resources to be able to do it. And they have built some pools for Burbach previously, so they were a qualified company.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion? If not, please vote.
All councilpersons voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
Moving right on to consideration of approval of Burbach Aquatics recommendation to award contract number 2, pool mechanical construction of the Norfolk Recreational Improvement Bond, Phase 2 project to Mechanical Incorporated from Freeport, Illinois, for a total of $1,500,400. Any further discussion?
I would move approval on that, Your Honor.
I'd appreciate that. It has been moved and approved with no further discussion. Please vote.
All councilpersons voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
Now I'll look for consideration of approval of Burbach Aquatics recommendation to award contract number 3, general construction of the Norfolk Recreational Improvement Bond Phase 2 project to Mecco Henny Contracting Incorporated of Omaha, Nebraska for a total of $4,656,000, $500.
I'll make the motion, Your Honor.
Second that.
We have a motion with a second. Need for discussion? Hearing none, please vote.
All councilpersons voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
Next would be consideration of approval of change order number 1 with Nemaha Landscape Construction for the general combination construction contract resulting in an increase of $52,000. Looking for that motion.
So moved, Your Honor.
Second.
Motion with a second to approve. Any discussion? Hearing none, please vote.
All councilpersons voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
And finally would be consideration of approval of change order number 1 with Sprint Turf for the synthetic turf portion of Veterans Memorial Park project resulting in an increase of $12,227.47. Do I have
Your Honor.
45 cents? I'm sorry. I'll pay the 2 cents.
45.
My fault. Do I have a motion with a second?
I'd make the motion with the additional 45 cents.
Okay. All right. A motion with a second. Any discussion? Please vote.
All councilpersons voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
Okay. And then last but not least, we're looking for discussion of negotiation to acquire administrative office space from Supertel Hospitality. If I could, I'd like a motion to go back into a closed session to discuss negotiations to acquire that administrative office space from Supertel Hospitality.
I'll make the motion, Your Honor.
Second.
Please vote.
All councilpersons voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
Okay.
If you would like to restate it.
Oops. Yep, I sure will. The motion carried. The closed session is to discuss negotiations to acquire administrative office space from Supertel Hospitality Incorporated. So, if we can move to the closed room for a bit.
Closed room.
Remember, the only discussion. Thanks for being here.